We got a huge game coming up this weekend in the Mountain West. The Fresno State Bulldogs travel to Laramie, Wyoming to take on the Cowboys. Let's break it down and talk about it.
Mountain West Conference play is back in full force, and we're back on the big mountain where we're going to give you a special look at a Mountain West showcase game this week.
Absolutely. We are super excited for this game. I'm JY. This is my good friend Steve. And this is a game we've been looking forward to for several weeks now, ever since Fresno started out to this blistering pace. The Cowboys upsetting Texas Tech, really strong against Texas. I mean, you can't ask for much more than a showcase game on this. They've got it at 8 p.m. on Fox. Absolute headliner. This is going to be one heck of a game. I have no doubt about it. And we want to bring you, as Steve said, a very special preview here. We're actually going to have our very first special guest joining us for this episode. For those of you that have seen us before, you know that I am a bit of a Wyoming fan, but I like all Mountain West teams. I've really enjoyed watching Fresno State this year. So we're going to go a little back and forth. We're going to start with Wyoming. Got a couple questions for our guest here. He'll give you his thoughts on Wyoming. Then we'll break into the Bulldogs, and Steve's going to give his thoughts on the Bulldogs. And then we want to hear from you guys too. So please make sure you give us some comments down below. Tell us what you think's going to happen in this game. Just as a reminder, we do picks and analysis every week. Our pick on this game is already out. I think this is going to be an excellent game. But let's break this down a little bit. So our special guest here, his name is Jim Anest. He is from originally Casper, Wyoming. He now resides in Colorado. He is an alumni of Wyoming. He was a sports writer up there for the Branding Iron back in the day, and he actually is the founder of the Cowboys in Colorado. He's also a writer for them and a contributing member. He speaks on the Cowboys Roundtable on occasion, and of course, he is a member of the Cowboy Joe Club up in Wyoming. So we're really excited to have Jim on here. I'm going to go through a couple questions. He's going to let you know his thoughts from boots on the ground over there in Wyoming, Colorado area. I know he's going to be at this game. He's been at the home game so far this year, so really got a great feel for where the Cowboys are at. So let's break into it here. So first question for Jim here is, Jim, how are you feeling about specifically Peasley and the Polk offense coming into this game versus Fresno State?
Well, Jason, you have to look at how Peasley is interacting with his team members. I mean, he was selected as team captain, and from what I can tell, all the co-players on this team really respect him. They feel he's a gamer and that he really goes out on the line for the Cowboys. As far as his play and so on this year, clearly he's had his couple really games that have stood out. The New Mexico game obviously was his best one, and what he did against Texas Tech really left the crowd. And I tell you, the Texas Tech fans that were at the game and after the game when I was speaking to them were also impressed by our quarterback. And at that time, you're still thinking about what he did the year before, and you're wondering, wow, is this guy going to be the real thing this year? And so he's kind of a work in progress still, but I think that, there's great improvements, and obviously the New Mexico game showed that, and the game right before with App State could be just a result of him having been banged up back in the Portland State game and causing him to miss the Texas game.
Yeah, I think really good points there. He certainly started with a bang this year in that Texas Tech game. I know there was quite a few naysayers with him coming into the season based on last year and what he could or couldn't do, but I think he turned a lot of, even not just Texas Tech fans, but Polk fans, I think he opened a lot of eyes and have people realizing that he can bring this team to a pretty high level this year.
Well, exactly. If you look at the New Mexico game, he was 16 of 25 or 64%, threw for 194 yards, a touchdown and a quarterback rating of 142. You add that on top of 7 rushing that he had, rushing attempts for 34 yards. He had, a total of 229 yards in the New Mexico game, which almost mirrors exactly what he did against Texas Tech, where his total offense was 225 yards. So I mean, just 4 yards difference. And those were really his key games this year, is Texas Tech and New Mexico. And if he has that kind of performance against Fresno, I think we're going to be really looking good on Saturday night.
All right, great thoughts there, Jim. Hey, second question for you. We talked about the offense. Let's look at the defense coming into the season. I was really high on this defense, one of the best in the Mountain West. So let's take a look at them. And how are you feeling about the Poke D? Specifically looking at this impressive Bulldog offense, what their passing game has been able to do with Mikey Keene. How are you feeling about our defense here from the Cowboy side?
Well, I hope we have more of the defense we had in Texas. I'm still thinking that this defensive unit has some work to do, and I'm hoping that game is on Saturday night. It's going to be time that we need to really lock down Fresno State to get a win. The Bulldogs, they're averaging 36.5 points a game, and their UCF transfer quarterback Mickey Keene really did a nice job last week, and he's averaging 300 yards per game. So it's going to be definitely a defensive challenge for the Cowboys on Saturday. If you look at their first downs and so on, Wyoming has 85 first downs this year, and their opponents have 111. They're completing 57% of their passing, and total offense of the opponents is almost 400 yards a game. I mean, they gave up to New Mexico 400, to Appalachian State 400. Texas Tech was at 431 yards, and even Portland State was 344.
Yeah.
But saying that, I think they definitely have the talent. I mean, that front four for the Cowboys is dang good. Their defensive ends are strong. Their linebacking crew is really good. And you know what? I kind of like what we're seeing in the backs there now as far as what they're doing on the backside. So it's clearly a bend, don't break type defense. Really showed up at Appalachian State with, what was it, 4 or 5 field goals.
Right.
And we kept them out of the end zone. So I think we're going to do that again on Saturday. I think we're going to have a little bit more of that, but I think the defense is really going to gel, and I get the feeling that Fresno State's going to be that game because of the nature of the game and the importance of the game. I think we're going to see a strong defensive effort by the Cowboys.
Great thoughts. Hey, last question for you. What do you feel are the potential wild cards coming into this game? Certainly, the game's in Laramie. That's always a difficult situation for any team going up into that location, kind of the high altitude. So what are your wild cards here coming into the game?
Well, Jason, I don't know if there's one thing, but I'm kind of thinking number one, once again, field goals, not touchdowns.
Yep.
We talked about the Appy State example, so once again, field goals, not touchdowns. Secondly, no big plays. We've got to limit the big plays that Fresno will want to make, and if we can limit the big plays, that once again fits into the bend but don't break. We need the Texas defense effort to show up again, where we only allowed 290 yards with a number 4 rated team of the nation. And I think the defense on Saturday night is going to have that kind of motivation. And finally, I just think the nature of this game is huge. To be this early in the season, and the Cowboys have 3 big games coming up. But this is the beginning of that trio of big games coming up for the Pokes. So I see a big defensive effort. You look at the crowd. I think the crowd is going to be energized. I think it's going to be a big crowd, and just everything that goes with the home field advantage with the Cowboys. Now, if you look historically, we haven't scored a touchdown. We haven't actually scored any points against Fresno State for the past 11 quarters. So this is going to have to change those were different games, different years, different personnel, and a different situation. I just really see that this is a team that has a lot that's going for them this year. There's a lot on the line, and with the type of offense we have now, I really think this is the first time we have this type of diverse offense since really Josh Allen's year with Brian Hill and Gentry and that group. So when you look at our running back depth, you look at our wide receiver depth, you kind of love our tight ends.
Yes.
And Harrison Whaley is just going to be a difference maker. As I think, our tight end, Ayer Asante, is going to be a difference maker. And our wide receiver group is dang good. So I say a combination of all that, and I kind of like what I'm seeing. I'm seeing the Wyoming win, something maybe along the score of 24-16, where Fresno State kicks 3 field goals and maybe gets a touchdown at the end somewhere. But I really like the Pokes on Saturday night.
Hey, that's good stuff. And I'll just add to that is I think if I take 2 games, one from each team here, I'll take the Appalachian State game and what the defense did to hold them in that game and keep them to field goals. We've talked about that a few times, but let's talk a little bit about a Fresno game. And they went down and obviously beat Arizona State there 29-0, which is huge if you look at the score. And it's a Pac-12 team and all that jazz. But they left a lot of points on the field there too. And again, it gets back to that same talk that if the defense can hold them to field goals and make Fresno State leave points on the field, as they did in Arizona State, it could be a good night for the Cowboys.
Well, the Cowboys have really played a very difficult schedule.
Yes.
And if you look at Fresno State, you say, well, yeah, they also played Purdue and Arizona State, but Arizona State is not a very good team. Purdue is really not a very good team.
Right.
And you look at the average ranking of opponents, Wyoming's is in the 60 range, while Fresno State is over 100, almost 110.
Right.
So the Pokes have played a much more difficult schedule, and while we didn't beat Texas, we all know how that game went. We certainly were in that game way into the fourth quarter.
Right.
So, schedule for schedule, I think it's pretty even, but overall the Pokes, if you look at the results from the other teams, we've played a much more difficult schedule.
Awesome, Jim. Hey, we really appreciate you coming on the Big Mountain here, our very first special guest that we've had. We hope to hear from you again. I know we'll probably get you on another preview episode here. Thanks a lot, and we'll talk to you soon. All right, well, that is Jim's take on the Cowboys. You don't have to hear it from me. Hear it from the guy on the ground there. Really good analysis coming from Jim. Let's switch gears now. Let's talk about the Bulldogs of Fresno State coming into this game about as high as you could hope at this point in the season. Undefeated, looking really good. Several big upsets there with going out of conference in terms of a Big Ten win and also a Pac-12 win. So let's break down them. I'm going to go through kind of the same questions. Let's look at the offense for the Bulldogs here. Mikey Keene has been looking phenomenal, very poised. He gets the ball out when he needs to. Maybe not a huge running game, but the passing game is absolutely a weapon here. So how are you feeling here about Mikey Keene and just the offense in general?
I mean, for me, Mikey Keene has done everything that you want him to do. He's completing about 70% of his passes, so he's very efficient, which keeps the offense going, keeps the chains moving. He's got a 4-to-1 touchdown interception ratio, which again, that's exactly where you want him to be. That means, again, they're scoring points. He's a big part of that, but he's protecting the ball. He's not turning it over a bunch. So I would say he's not maybe blowing people out of the water. But he's doing exactly what this Bulldog team needs him to do to continue to be successful, sustain drives, put points on the board, protects the ball. And that's why, the team has the record that they do at this point.
Right. Totally agree. Just been really impressive. We've watched several of their games, commented back and forth on how impressed we've been with their offense. So let's switch gears and talk about the defense. They maybe haven't been tested the way the Cowboys have so far. Not to take anything away from their wins, I'm certainly not trying to do that. But you look at some of the offenses the Cowboys have had to face, and I know when you look at the standings, the Cowboys are significantly lower than what the Bulldogs are. But you got to take into account the teams that they're playing as well. How do you feel the Bulldog defense is going to stack up against a stud running back like Whaley and just the poke offense in general?
Yeah, so I took a look at the defense this week. We were looking at some statistics, some numbers, and like you mentioned, the Bulldogs have not faced some of the offenses that Wyoming has faced, of course.
Yeah.
Now they have faced some multiple Power 5 opponents, and they're right there with they're in the top 10 of total defense. Mm-hmm. They have just a solid run defense, solid pass defense. They're not the threat to maybe turn you over as much and score points on defense. Right. But honestly, they have just a solid defense on both sides of the ball, in both the passing game and the defense. And so I'm very confident in the Bulldogs defense. And for me, the thing with Wyoming and going against Wyoming's offense is Wyoming's offense has not proved to be super dynamic. Mm-hmm. It doesn't scare me. When I compare the offenses they've played so far compared to Wyoming's offense,
sure,
it's not like Wyoming. I mean, yes, they do have a very talented running back, but they don't really have a dynamic defense. If the Bulldogs are able to load up and stop the run, mm-hmm. I just don't see Wyoming's pass offense being able to put pressure on the Bulldogs defense. And I agree with you as far as a low-scoring game.
Yeah.
And maybe Fresno's defense is not quite on the level of Wyoming, but I think it's going to be good enough against a Wyo offense that's not super dynamic.
I totally agree. Definitely a little bit one-dimensional, and Peasley can be very hot and cold. I mean, and we've seen that. Definitely has taken the step forward that I expected him to take this year at quarterback, but still can have questionable games, specifically looking back to the Appy State game. Not the best effort from the passing game there. So, last question for you. Let's look at the wild cards in this game. We asked Jim about what he thinks his wild cards are. He had several to talk about. Who do you think is a wild card or a potential game changer? What do you got here for the Bulldogs?
So I got two things for you.
Okay.
I got an individual wild card and a team wild card.
Okay.
So to start off, Jalen Gill, I think is a major wild card in this game, mm-hmm. and a major wild card for this Fresno State Bulldog team going forward this season. Mm-hmm. So first of all, let's talk about his history. He was a transfer in. He started at Ohio State. He was a top 50 wide receiver recruit in the country. The Ohio State wide receiver room totally loaded with 5 stars NFL prospects, so didn't quite break through there. Went to a Boston College team that really just didn't showcase its passing game, showcase his skills. Mm-hmm. Comes to Fresno State, started a little slow, but he's been building throughout the season. This last week against Nevada, he had 8 receptions, 126 yards, 2 touchdowns. When he finally got the ball, he could score from anywhere. I think one of his touchdowns was a pass behind the line of scrimmage that he took for 65 yards.
It was, and I will say the defense played that play extremely poorly, yes, but he still got the play.
Exactly. And so you may not score a 65-yard touchdown on every time you run that play. However, he showed in this game, and he's been showing throughout the season, he's been building on that he can be that weapon. Sure. He can be that go-to guy.
Yeah.
We talked about Mikey Keene just being very efficient, getting the ball to his receivers. So for me, I think Jalen Gill can be that guy that can possibly bust open this Wyoming defense. He had 8 receptions last week. I want to see at least that, maybe 9 or 10. If he can get 8 receptions plus, I think that that would be the key to the Fresno offense, really putting it to Wyoming and being a dynamic offense where they can threaten them all over the field.
Sure. Okay.
So that's my wild card player.
Yep.
My team wild card is, the fact that this Fresno State Bulldog team, they've proven this year already that they are road warriors. Mm-hmm. Went on the road in the Big Ten, got a victory over Purdue. Went on the road, Arizona State. I understand Arizona State's not setting the world on fire.
Yeah.
In the Pac-12, however, they have talent. It's a Power 5 opponent on the road, so they've shown that they can go on the road. Now, were those two environments. Purdue might have been a decent environment. They weren't quite the environments probably they're going to see in Wyoming this weekend, I think.
Right.
How at what is it, War Memorial Stadium? Is that the not maybe quite the environment. However, they have that experience. They've gone on the road. They got those tough victories. So for me, that is a wild card of the team. That mentality. They have confidence in the quarterback. They have confidence in their system, and they have confidence that they can go on the road and pull out another big win.
Yeah, all very valid points. As I said in the start, I am super hyped for this game. I hope you guys are too. Overall, I'd love to see the Pokes pull this one out, but I'm just looking for an awesome college football game. Primetime, Fox. What more can you ask for? The Mountain West getting what they deserve here with a very high-level game on primetime. And I am just super stoked.
Same here.
All right. Well, hey, again, let us know your thoughts. Where are you at on this? Do you think one of these teams maybe is going to have a breakout game? You seeing what we're seeing here? Most likely a low-scoring game. Who do you think is going to be the key to this game? What do you think the wild card is going to be to this game? Maybe we got a Whaley versus a Gill. Who has the most yards? Who has the most touchdowns? That might be the telltale sign right there. Who knows? So, hey, we thank you for tuning in. We want to thank Jim again. Awesome to have him on as a special guest. And we'll see you guys next time on the Big Mountain.